This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 53 of the jumbleThink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the jumbleThink podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we'll give you some tips on how you can chase your big idea and dream and make it a reality. On today's episode, we have Mac Skinner, owner of Two Rock Amps. More about Mac in a moment. On Thursday's episode, we have some incredible guests, Alessandra Perez Rubio and Lisa Rector, co-founders of Mestiza New York, a fashion company for women. They started out as best friends, and now they're creating something amazing in the world of business. They've designed clothing worn by people like Chrissy Teigen, Ashley Graham, Kate Walsh, America Ferrera, Molly Sims, so many other people. Their story goes deeper than just fashion. They also incorporate social mission into what they're doing. I cannot wait to share this episode with you. It's awesome. Do you have a big idea or dream and you simply don't know where to start? jumbleThink is here to help you. Drop me an email, mike@jumbleThink.com. And I'd love to connect with you, hear your story, hear what you want to do, and help you as you create something incredible. Now let's jump into my interview with Mac Skinner of Two Rock Amps. I am a big fan of today's guest. His name's Mac Skinner. He is one of the co-owners of Two Rock Amps along with Eli Lester. Two Rock Amps have been used by so many different players. People like John Mayer, Matt Schofield, Eric Gales, and countless other just powerful guitar players. Two Rock is known for its signature sound, along with the fact that it's made in Northern California by hand. These amps are pretty incredible, and there's just something special about what they're doing with the Two Rock brand. In the episode, Mac's going to share a little bit about his journey from the restaurant world to the music world, along with what it's like to own a boutique guitar amp company, the transition he's seeing in the music industry. He also shares a little bit about the past and the future of Two Rock. It's an exciting episode. So let's jump into this interview. Mac, it is super cool for me to have you on the podcast. I'm a big fan of what you're doing. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be here. I'm good, actually. I'm really good. Things have been great over the last several months.
That is so awesome. You have an interesting story. You're now one of the owners of Two Rock Amps, famous for being used by John Mayer, Matt Schofield, Eric Gales, so many other just influential guitar players. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you went from working in a restaurant world to being an owner of a boutique amp company?
So I started, I'd say, in fourth grade playing music in elementary school, and had a really good friend of mine that I grew up with. That was a musician. His family was his dad was a composer, arranger. His mom was a singer, and we spent a lot of time playing music. And I was around music a lot as a kid. Ended up in my high school jazz band, playing saxophone actually. And just really have always had this deep love for music as a kid and growing up. And then I went to college up in Northern California, Sonoma State, and while I spent a good 6 years sort of trying to find my path, music wasn't one of them during that time. And I sort of lost my way in the major that I was in, and decided to continue on my path of working in restaurants because it was kind of what was paying the bills through college. And I really enjoyed cooking. I mean, it was a blast. And back of the house, that scramble to get food out and service and working with people. And I loved that industry. And I got to a point where I really needed to make a decision whether or not I was going to continue down the path of working in restaurants and maybe go to culinary school, or if I was going to do something else and maybe go back to school and try and finish my degree. But what degree was sort of the question, and it just sort of dawned on me that music has always been a staple in my life. And so I decided to go back and get my music degree. And during that time, I had a conversation with Joe and Bill at Two Rock, or at that time it was K&M Analog Designs, and they wanted me to take a friend down to NAMM, and the two of us go and set everything up. And for me, going back to my childhood and always wanting to go to NAMM, and then also being now starting my career in the music industry, it was a perfect scenario. So I spent some time down at NAMM, and really just kind of fell in love with that whole scene, and knew that I was sort of following the right path at that time. So while I was down there, Joe and Bill kind of asked me, "Hey, listen, do you want to build some parts and start doing some piecework while you're going to school?" And I, said, "Yeah." Always as a kid, I used to love building models and things like that. So it was kind of the same sort of dexterity. And slowly but surely, I worked my way out of the restaurant and into building full time with K&M. And over the years, sort of built a great rapport with Joe and Bill, and at some point started doing more than just building, more production management, and then answering phones and starting to deal with the customer service side of things. Then into some of the online marketing and things of that nature, and just kind of became an everything Swiss Army knife, if you will. And then in 2010, the Two Rock brand was bought by Premier Builders Guild. At which point it was sort of this decision of do I stay on with Premier Builders Guild, or do I move on from here? And I made a decision to stay with Premier Builders Guild. I thought it was a cool vision of what they had planned and what they were going to do. And unfortunately, I don't necessarily think that Two Rock was the right brand for that vision. And it didn't eventually work out, probably to my benefit.
Yeah.
And then come 2016, the owner of Premier Builders Guild had asked me if I wanted to take the Two Rock brand away from him. And I had been working on another project, sort of side project, with a good friend of mine, Eli Lester. And after my conversation with the owner of Premier Builders Guild, I had a conversation with Eli, and I said, "You'll never guess what the conversation that I just had," and kind of told him about it. Now, Eli and I go back probably 10 years, because he's a Two Rock player, really great, phenomenal guitar player, and that I'd known over the years and was a customer. And so Eli and I not only had a working relationship, but became friends, back then. And so when I told him about what was going on, probably one of his first answers was, "Wow." And then the second was, "Do you want a partner?"
Yeah.
And to which I responded, "I couldn't think of a better partner." So we started talking about what that looked like, and where we thought it could go. And here we are about 8 months later, and or I guess almost 9 months later, and really going strong and having a great time again, which is good. And I feel like we've really brought the brand back from a place that was just not healthy, and really enjoying ourselves. And if you're not having fun doing what you're doing, I don't think there's any reason to do what you're doing. So we're having fun, we're having a good time, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and you guys are like rocking it out right now with new amp releases, and you brought Bill back to do amp design, and which is really cool. Bill was one of the founding owners and kind of the lifeblood of the design aspect for years and years of Two Rock. So you guys are really not only going back to the basics of what you started, but also innovating towards the future.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really realized for Two Rock is we needed to go back to some of the basics, and so when we took back over, we had this long discussion about the look of the amps, the feel of the amps, what the amps were doing, and what they used to do and what they were currently doing, and just sort of weighing some of the some input that we had gotten to of sort of the look and feel. We decided to sort of take it back to some of the basics, and most of that is in the looks and then in the internal design. And the big decision that we had to make was how we were going to deal with the design aspects. And yes, Bill being former co-owner of Two Rock, him and Joe, what they did and what they built was a really fantastic company. And I feel like we got away from that. I think Eli and I were both on that same page. We kind of got away from that a little bit. We really wanted to get back to what made Two Rock a good company, and so here we are.
It's so cool. Now, one of our listeners on the Dumble is of course the unicorn of amps. He asked, "What's Joe up to now?"
Joe and I actually still keep in touch, and I know him and Bill have had conversations, and actually we talked to Joe, and he came down when we took back over and let him know what was going on. He was really excited for us. I think he was excited to see the legacy continue. We talked about ways that we could maybe work Joe into the process and coming down and playing some amps again, and getting back in the fold of, being a part of seeing what's going down. I'll always value his input. He was an instrumental part of me being where I'm at today. I think right now we're still in those discussions, and I think he's enjoying himself playing golf and working on some consulting gigs, and we'll continue those discussions. I think it's important to recognize that it was Joe and Bill both who built this company to what it was pre-PBG. And I tell Joe all the time, I want to make sure that we always recognize that, because he was an instrumental part.
That's so good. And Bill and Joe are both incredible people. And to see the ownership of Two Rock come back into the fold of people that are super passionate about what they're doing and so hands-on in the process is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's funny because I was just talking to Eli this morning a little bit about this, and he was even saying, we were talking about his relationship with Bill and the long-standing relationship that him and Bill have had. I mean, over the years, even, pre-PBG, and Eli would, although he was a customer, he would still come and he would, Bill would call him and say, "Hey, I've got this new design. I want you to play this." And he would drive all the way over here and sit down with Bill for hours, and they would play through different things. And I think that's one of the things that's always helped Bill in design too, because he's had so many great players around him that have helped him through the design process. Steve Kimock and Eli and even Joe when they own the company together, and various other players that have said, Bill, this is what I'm looking for. And Bill's ability to translate that, I think, is something pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing. Now, a lot of people that are not in the music industry, that are not guitar players, they're not going to know the difference between, like, let's say a Two Rock and a Fender or a Vox. You build boutique amps. What does that mean, and how does that make you different from companies like Fender or Gibson or Vox or PV?
I would say you started out this question by saying that some people might not know the difference between the sound of a Fender or Gibson or Vox, and although that may be true, I think that does happen, and that's fine. I think what we do and what we try to do, especially from the term boutique, is to try and build the best possible amplifier we can in a hand-built process that gives the customer a personal service that you don't necessarily get from, I'd say, bigger brands. As far as being able to pick up the phone and call myself or call Eli and have a conversation about what's the right amp for you, or what's in your signal chain, what are you using, what pedals, etc. That personal service, I think, is one of the things that makes boutique. I'd say the hand-built process is the other big part of boutique. Being able to, have the attention to detail and watch the process from start to finish, from, the build, the chassis, the boards, the play testing, the constant play testing, the constant search for a new sound or something different or something bigger, is part of what we do, and I think what makes boutique. We're away from that sort of bigger corporate machine where it's pumping out production. We kind of got there a little bit with Premier Builders Guild. I'd say there was a point where, we instituted a lean manufacturing process, parts of which we still use today in our manufacturing process, but we were really cranking them out. We were probably putting out 7 to 8 amps a day.
Wow.
And trying to do that with the same sort of attention and quality that we were when we were building 2 amps a day. And, we're back probably in that 2 to 3 amp a day build time. But, we've always, and one of the things that I've always tried to do is strive for quality no matter what. And that's hard to achieve when you start hitting quantity, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say probably one of the harder parts about that is I'd say the quality of the amplifiers we're able to maintain, the ability to support that many people becomes a difficult process. Then the quality of the customer service, it's hard to achieve that, and that's a big part of what makes boutique, I think.
Now, your amps are designed, of course, in America, but they're also manufactured in Northern California. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the first 10 Two-Rock amps were built in Two-Rock Valley in a studio, and the guys said, well, what are we going to name this thing? And somebody said, how about Two-Rock?
Such a cool story about that.
I drive through Two-Rock on the way home a lot. So, it's a little valley. But there's a lot of talk about employing U.S. workers in manufacturing in the U.S. And that it makes me proud to be able to do that. And we don't have a lot of people working here. There's only 5 of us, but to be able to employ American workers and in a manufacturing position, using our hands and building something hand built, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I mean, the name is so cool because it's like to rock, to rock. And it actually comes from a place, people would think, oh, maybe it has to do with the amp configuration or the fact that people in the rock industry might use it and stuff. But it's just so cool that the location, the first amps was actually made in a place called Two Rock.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a strong connection to this area too, and having grown up around here, and it's pretty neat driving through Two Rock and working for a company called Two Rock.
Now you have a signature sound, and people try to define it. They try to say, "Oh, it's a Dumble clone," which it's not. Oh, it's a vintage Fender blackface sound, which maybe a little bit, but it's not. How would you define the sound of a Two Rock amp? And I know that that's actually a difficult question to answer because you guys are growing the sound profile at Two Rock too.
So that's a question that gets talked about a lot, especially over the last 10 years. I mean, and especially during the PVG time when we were talking about what direction Two Rock was going and what was Two Rock. And I'd say initially there was a big stigma that was sort of stuck to us that we were the poor man's Dumble, and that really stuck, and I see it still today when people respond to certain things on forums and stuff. I wish I could have one. I could never afford one. And if you look at some of our entry level models, I say entry level in air quotes because I wouldn't say as a Studio Pro is necessarily an entry level because it's a great gig and amp, and I see guys up on stages all over the place with them. Still a professional amplifier. I mean, that's really what we build as professional amplifiers. And when you start talking about gear that's geared towards the professional, generally you're going to want the stuff that you can rely on. And sometimes that costs a little bit more money. But I don't think by any stretch of the imagination we're breaking the bank. Now, as far as the what is Two Rock and what is the sound, I think that question is asked a lot. And you look at anything that's out there, really, and almost anything comes from two or three pretty big brands, and those were Fenders and Marshalls and Vox. And sort of the pioneering of those amplifiers has filtered down into all the smaller boutique builders that we see today. Some take influences from Fenders, some take influences from Marshalls, etc. So I think you're always going to see those connections with the vintage amplifiers. And quite honestly, the vintage amplifiers are phenomenal. I mean, they're some of the best out there. And so we're constantly listening to our vintage amplifiers, and mostly I would say I mean, there's probably a greater connection to Fenders than anything else in our amps, but Eli's got a huge vintage amp collection, vintage Fender collection that he's constantly comparing between new stuff that we're building and old stuff, and if it stands up to it and it sounds good, then it's something that we continue with. So there's always that benchmark of the vintage stuff, I would say. And then as far as the Dumble thing goes, I mean, look, there's a lot of Dumble clones out there and people trying to achieve that sound. I think one of the things that's unique about Bill and his ability to design amplifiers is that he's been in hundreds of amplifiers, from thousands of amplifiers, from Fenders to Dumbles to Marshalls to you name it, and his sort of his palette is made up of all these different amps that he's seen and played and reviewed. And so the way he sort of thinks, this is kind of his process, is, he comes with an idea and says, I wonder if I could take some of that, and some of this and put it together, or something along those lines. It's much like, I was talking about being in the restaurant industry. It's much like a chef sort of making a dish, right? It's, okay, well, I'm going to open up a recipe book. I'm going to find a recipe from somebody else. And then I'm going to go, well, this is a cool recipe, but if I tweak it and I do this, or I add this, it might be even better, or it might be something completely different. You don't know. And I think that's the approach a lot to the Two Rock stuff. Now, as time has sort of rolled on, I'd say the Two Rock sound has really developed, and I would almost consider it sort of a California sound or a West Coast sound. You've sort of got the Dumbles, the Fenders, the Two Rocks. They're all kind of have those characteristics, I think. And not everybody hears the same thing. And I often talk about this with speakers, right? Speaker choice is so subjective. What sounds good to one person might not sound good to the next. I might think it has a lot of highs, and you might think it sounds kind of dark. And it's always fascinating to me when I go through speaker testing and I hear one thing and somebody else hears another. But I think the same is true of amplifiers. From even, and this goes back to our last question, even from the Fender Gibson Vox, newer reissues to the Two Rocks. What may sound really good to one person might not sound good to another. And what may sound like a Dumble may not sound like a Dumble to another, and whatnot. So I think it's really in what the consumer is hearing and what they're actually really trying to achieve by playing a Two Rock. Are they trying to get to that Dumble sound, or are they trying to get more of a bigger Fender sound? I'd say, in terms of our newer classic reverb signature that we released, I've heard it referred to as, a super on steroids, a super reverb on steroids. And that's kind of what we were after, was that really big sound. And it started with, some of the Fender Blackface type circuitry. So, everything is sort of made out of everything, right? It's sort of a hodgepodge, and we're all looking at different things and out of similar circuits. So
yeah, and unless you have some crazy engineering background, you're probably, if you're an amp designer, getting inspiration from somewhere or multiple places in your process of how you design.
Right, and again, I feel like that's like anything, right?
Yeah.
We all start from somewhere. We all go, oh, that's kind of cool, but what if I did this?
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned that some people say, oh, Two Rock's a poor man's Dumble. Well, other than train wreck amps, I think every amp is technically a poor man's amp compared to a $90,000 Dumble. So,
right.
I mean, that's a small house in the middle of the Southeast somewhere.
Right, exactly.
So speaking of small, one of the questions we got a lot about was, You've had some small amps in the past. Of course, the XO15, which is what I own, a 15-watter XO15 awesome amp. You have some new smaller amps coming out or already out. Burnside, which is an 18-watt, and the Cardiff, which is 15 watts. One person asked, do you plan on doing more baby versions of the big amps? Like you had the Jet, you had the Gain Master. Somebody asked, is the Gain Master a mini version of the TS1? Or inverted, the TS1's a big brother of the Gain Master. So there's a lot of questions about the smaller amp space, guitar amps. What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, I guess first off, I have to remark on the EXO, because that was the first amp, and since you have one, we'll put a little EXO plug in here.
Nice.
That was the first amp that we ever took from a pencil drawing to a completed product. And that was a process, especially during the PVG time. We had everything was designed by committee, so there was 10 different people and 10 different email threads going on about what to call it, what it should look like, and how this would work and how that would work. And from a production standpoint, where I sat, and having to take all these ideas and filter them down to make sure that the output was what was the original vision was quite a challenge, but the end result was a really cool amp. So I'm glad you dig your EXO. We've sort of gone down that path of smaller amps. I would say more so in the last 6 years than sort of before that. And the Jet was sort of a smaller version of the custom reverb signature, sort of the grab and go. The Studio Pro was sort of the grab and go of the classic reverb. And then the Gain Master, yes, was sort of a grab and go of the TS1. That's what we were after with that amplifier. Although I think the name sort of misled people a little bit. Gain Master kind of says high gain a little bit, and I think it turned people off a little bit. But those are phenomenal amps. I mean, you'll see Osnoy is out playing a 100-watt. He's got 200-watt Gain Master versions. One we did all NOS and did some vintage transformers in. The other one was more stock with some vintage NOS parts. We're always searching for something that's in that low wattage range. I think it's good to give people that option. Not everybody's playing big stages. And to that effect, a 22 or 35 watt amplifier sometimes can be perfect for a medium-sized club, depending on if it's mic'd up or how it's being used. If it's being, small head and a 112 cabinet is usually what I suggest to people that are playing those size venues. Down to the small combos, the grab and goes that are, like a Studio Pro. I know Matt Schofield has a small 35 watt Studio Pro that he uses for flying gigs and for his clinics that he does sometimes. It's a perfect amp for him. And so I think it's good that we offer those smaller wattage options. The Cardiff was the only one that we sort of got off the rails a little bit because we hadn't done many 15 watt EL84 amplifiers.
Which is a little bit more of that Vox or British sound, right?
Yeah, sort of that Vox was sort of going after that Vox AC sound. And we hadn't done much of that. And it was an interesting test to see where that amplifier went. Well, it's a great amplifier. And sales have been fairly solid on them. I'll be interested to see how that product unfolds over the course of the next year. But it's a cool amp. And so to answer your question in sort of a wide fashion, we'll continue to explore that smaller wattage, low wattage idea with a performance mind, which is kind of where we've always come from. Is how would this sound on a stage?
Yeah, and I think the one amp that I'm most excited about is the Burnside, the 18 watt. What is that? A blackface styled amp?
Yeah, so it was kind of going after the wide panel tweed sound, sort of like a wide panel super. Again, going back to Eli's vintage collection, we kind of said, let's go down this path a little bit and let's see what we can do about sort of mixing the two rock sound with some vintage amplifiers. And one of the tweed sound was kind of what we were most intrigued by, the mix of the two, because you often see a lot of guys that'll play, they'll play their larger amplifiers, especially their two rocks. I know, like, Matt has this thing where he'll play his two rock, and then he plays, if he's recording, sometimes he'll have a two rock and then he'll have a super, or something along those lines, something to get that sort of tweed grittiness out of. And so we kind of wanted to explore that avenue and where that would go. And thus the tweed covering and trying to give it sort of that retro look with the new two rock badge. And it's a great amp. We actually just finished recording some videos in studio with Matt and Josh Smith, and it's going to be exciting. It's a really neat sounding amp, and a great complement to a bigger amp too, if that's what you're after.
Well, we've talked about small amps. We've got to talk about big amps. One of the questions we got was, is there a custom reverb version 4 in the works?
The short answer of that would be yes. I would say it's not going to be called a custom reverb. I think we are sort of retiring that custom reverb name. Instead of going V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, V6. I think it's time to sort of move on from that. To that point, we just recently had a version 1, a version 2, and a version 3 all in the shop at the same time. And that was, one of them was built by me. The version 1 was built by me. And that was a fun process to sort of go through that progression of those amplifiers and what each of them was. And to actually hear them all side by side, I think for the first time, was pretty neat. Then taking that information that we got from playing all three of those and knowing what Bill has been working on as of recent, and sort of talking about what it would look like to incorporate not only the former custom reverbs, but the newer stuff that Bill's doing, we have a pretty exciting release for NAMM.
Okay. Summer NAMM or NAMM in this winter?
Probably winter NAMM, yeah, in January. So we're still exploring what that's going to look like. A 2-channel with reverb, and which is essentially what the custom reverb was. Something that will complement the classic reverb, but something with an overdrive. And I think that's really the focus right now, is how to make that overdrive really sweet.
That's awesome. If somebody does have a 2-rock and they don't have a reverb on it, what reverb do you recommend?
Oh, that's a big question. There's so many reverb units out there these days. Going back to the straight up lexicons, which I think are great little reverb units. And there's so many different pedals out there that make great reverbs. I would say one of the ones that I've most recently had experience with that I think is a phenomenal reverb unit, made by a really, really intelligent designer, is the Free the Tone Ambispace. That there's a clip of Josh playing through, I believe, that into a TS1, and it sounded really, really good.
We had a person ask us on one of the Facebook groups, what is the most 1962 Fender Bassman sounding amp, or what is a good replacement for that from the 2-rock family of amps? They love 2-rock. They love the 62 Fender Bassman. They're trying to find the sweet amp for them. What do you recommend?
Think about that for a second. I would say probably the best amp to start with would be the Classic Reverb Signature, the new Classic Reverb Signature. With our new transformer, new 100-watt transformer, they sound really, really good, and they've got that. There's a black face setting on there that just kills. That's where I would start. If you were to take a step down from there, I would start to look at the Studio Pro. But you're not getting the wattage that you get out of a Bassman. So I would say probably the Classic Reverb is the best place to start.
That's really cool. Now, one of the conversations in the world of amps lately has been, is this amp pedal friendly or not? I think it's kind of a bloated conversation, to be honest, because, most amps are going to be okay with most pedals. It's just a matter of how you take the time to dial it in. We got a couple questions specifically. How friendly are Two Rocks towards pedals, especially like the TS1 compared to the classic Reverb and some of the other stuff that you guys are making?
Yeah, I would agree with you that it can be a bloated question. There's so many pedals out there these days and so many different combinations, permutations and combinations that people are using. But to answer your question in a broad sense, Two Rocks take pedals fantastically. I would say the one place that you may run into, and I don't know, maybe not a lot of people use loops. One place you may run into issues, and this is a conversation that I have with people a lot, is what works in my loop and what doesn't. The rule of thumb generally is the time-based effects in the loop, and then the stomp boxes, overdrives, etc. in the front. But if you don't have a buffered loop, which let's say the classic Reverb signature, for example, is not a buffered loop, you can run into some sound degradation issues, and which you need a buffer. And there's some great people out there that are doing some really cool reviews and shows and things like that. I know the YouTube That Pedal Show. They do a fantastic job of reviewing different pedals and what to use and how to use them. Daniel at the Gig Rig is doing some really cool pedal board stuff. Josh Smith's new pedal board, you look at that thing, it's just phenomenal. Some of the things and the innovations that are coming out in that world are fantastic. I don't think we can spend a lot of time focusing on it because that's a whole nother world, other than just making a good platform so that when somebody plugs in or plugs into a pedal and then into the amplifier, that they get all of the tone that they're expecting out of that amplifier. And that's what we have to focus on more than anything. I would say, it depends on what pedal you're using. And the short answer is, yeah, Two Rocks take pedals fantastically.
One question we got, there's a lot of amp builders out there who are venturing in the world of overdrive pedals. Morgan Amps has one. Some of the other amp companies have it. Mesa Bogies put out some. Is that in the roadmap for Two Rock?
We've talked about the pedal thing many, many times. And we've actually Bill's designed a few pedals. And every time we do it, we kind of just go, this isn't really for us right now. We just need to keep focusing on building amplifiers. Is it in the work? I wouldn't really say it's even in the works. It's not really something we're considering right now. We've talked about several different designs and several different processes and what we would do and how we would do it. There is a possibility, but it's sort of far out from the present.
We have talked about some of the amazing players that use Two Rock amps. John Mayer, Matt Schofield, Eric Gales, so many other incredible players. How have those players impacted the development of Two Rock?
I'd say one of the best ways to explain how those players have shaped Two Rock has probably just been the personal relationships or the personal service. Let's use Matt Schofield as an example. Matt came in one day years ago. He had already been playing his Two Rock for a while, and then he sort of ventured on his own tone quest to see what else is out there, what else he would play. Is there something else out there that he could get more of at it than his custom reverb that he was playing? He was trying various different brands and various different models, and him and I had a conversation one day. So, I'm just on this sort of quest to find out what else is out there, and I'm going to be in your area in a couple of weeks, and maybe we can play through some stuff. And so he came here to the shop, and we set up a couple different amps for him. We set up at that time that version of the TS1. We set up, we had a classic reverb in here that was a tube rectified version. It was the only tube rectified version we had ever built, and it was a special order from a customer. It just happened to be here when he was here. And so we set that up and a couple other amps. And he played the TS1. He said, this is a really fantastic amp. He said, I just don't think that's where I'm going right now. And he played the classic reverb, and he said, this is it. And then Bill said, well, I had this tremolo amp too. And he put this tremolo amp in front of him, and Matt played the tremolo amp. He said, if I could put that tremolo amp inside of that classic reverb, that would be the amp for me.
Wow.
And that's where we started with the Matt Schofield signature amp that we did for him, and released, I think it was probably 2014, 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. And that collaboration of him sitting down and playing these various amplifiers, I think was extremely helpful, not only to us getting idea from Matt what it was that he was after, but for Bill and him to sort of discuss, sort of the tone shaping and where he would go and what he would change and what he would do. And that collaboration, I think, has really helped shape where T-Rock is at. I mentioned this before with, these various artists being around Bill, like Steve Kimock. I know him and Kimock have spent hours upon hours upon hours just tweaking circuits and playing around with different sounds and then presenting them to Eli and going, Eli, what do you think about this? I mean, that sort of collaboration, I think, is what's been the big shaping thing for T-Rock, what's really shaped T-Rock. And that personal attention, just being able to, go back and forth with artists and say, hey, what do you like? What do you not like? What works and what doesn't work? Having somebody say, I was up on stage last night and this is what happened, or this is how this worked, or this is what I needed differently is tremendous feedback.
Well, and it's interesting. I've seen videos of different musicians coming into the shop and playing through either an amp that you're working on for them or going through kind of your lineup, and they always plug in and it's always the same thing. They'll play kind of like their signature lick, whatever they're known for, and they'll start playing, and all of a sudden like this little smirk comes over their face and they're just like, yeah, there's the sound I'm looking for.
Yeah, I love that smirk. I love seeing that, and actually, and I get it too, man. When Bill and Eli come back and they say, what do you think about this? And I take it from more of a studio aspect, because for me that's really where I live, is in more the recording side of things, and that's production side of things, and that's where I love to be. And so for me, I listen to these amps sometimes, and I stand back and I get that same smirk and I go, and that's it. That sounds really good. Or being out in the audience and hearing an artist play and go, wow, that's what that thing is supposed to do. That smirk comes over my face too. It's much like, again, and I'm going to relate it again to the restaurant industry. And it's like watching people, eat food. And when they try something for the first time and they smile and say, that's it. That's the taste. That's what I was after. That's something special. You got something special at that point.
And I think the other thing that makes you guys so special, and there are other builders out there that are doing this, so I don't think it's just you guys that are doing this, but I think that there are a handful of companies that are doing this so well in the maker space. Guitar builders, whether that's an electric builder, acoustic builder, or an amp builder, or even some pedal builders, is that you treat all of your customers, whether they're a big name national, international act, or whether it's a local musician maybe playing at a church, you've done a great job of being there for your players, those customers. Why is that so significant to you guys, and how has that impacted what you're doing?
To me, that's one of the things that I think makes T-Rock a good company, and other companies for that matter. I mean, I have tons of respect for other amp companies, guitar builders, etc. I'm not trying to sound specialer or holier than thou, but I think any company, it starts with customer service, a good product and customer service, and you have a winner. It doesn't matter if it's the high profile artist or it's the the bedroom guy. I think it's important that, I mean, look, as a consumer, I expect good customer service. It drives me nuts when I call somebody and I get blown off because I'm like, I spend all day taking care of people. Why can't you take care of me?
Yeah.
But it's, I think it really, that's the key, being able to pick up that phone and call somebody and talk to them and say, hey, what's the problem? Eli and I were talking recently. He said, I keep asking people for their phone numbers because they'll send an email and I'll send it over to Eli and say, can you answer this one? And he answers them back and says, just send me your phone number. Let me give you a call because it's so much easier sometimes to pick up a phone, especially like when you're talking about how certain speakers react or, what can I use in the loop? And that's a long email to answer, so sometimes it's better to just pick up the phone. And I think especially now more than ever, we realize that. I mean, I think as consumers, we sort of demand that now. And I think, and rightfully so. There's so many products out there and so many different builders and different ways that people do things that I think it's important to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody.
One of the questions we got a lot of, and it's, I think, burning through the forums, it's burning in Facebook groups, is what in the world is going on with John Mayer right now? He signed his PRS artist deal, and now you see him with PRS amps. You're not seeing him with 2-Rock amps, but even then, he's using the Dumble sometimes. He's using some Fender stuff from sometimes. What's going on with John Mayer? What's going on with the relationship with 2-Rock and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, I think this is something that's common to a lot of players, and I can't speak specifically to John because I haven't spoken with him about it. But I think everybody sort of goes on this tone quest, tone journey, trying different things. It's like I was telling you about Matt not too long ago, you know? So, and I think John's in that space. I mean, you see him playing different guitars, and he's been playing a lot of the PRS these days, but he went through the Fender things, and he's playing, PRS guitars and the amps and the Dumbles and the Fenders, and man, he's just on a tone quest, and I respect that, and I think that's great, and we wish him the best of luck. I mean, I don't have any. There's no bad blood. I don't have any, so I think that he's gonna do great things. Maybe he'll pick up his 2-Rock again. Maybe he won't. I don't know. But everybody, I think, goes through that, right? I mean, everybody tries different guitars and different amps and goes, maybe this isn't working for me right now, or I want to try something different. There's that periodical Tone Quest, right? Because it's a real thing.
And he uses a Kemper on as his practice amp and some other things. So it's just interesting because he was so in the trenches as a 2-Rock guy. He seems to kind of be trying to figure out who he is from a musical standpoint right now. He's doing the Dead and Company thing, and he's doing his own thing. I mean, it's a little like all over the place, and it'll be interesting to see where he settles at the end of this.
Yeah, I think I think it's part of what makes music great, right? I mean, we have different ideas and different concepts, and we try different things, and we go through different phases in our journey and our tone quest, and it's what makes music interesting, right? And what makes people interesting too. We're all trying different things, and we're all trying to find a fun place to be.
I have 2 more questions about amp building, then we'll jump into our rapid fire questions. The first one is that the Washington Post just came out with an article, and it was called The Slow Death of the Electric Guitar.
I saw that.
It was a crazy article, read through it. And it seems like every 5, 10, 15 years, there's this whole movement like, oh my goodness, the electric guitar world, the acoustic guitar world, they seem inverted usually, but from each other. Are we just in another cycle? Is it just the sheer amount of used gear out there? What is going on with the electric guitar world, and how is it affecting 2-Rock?
Well, you just mentioned in your last response on the John Mayer question, him using a Kemper. I'd say that's probably one of the big things that I've seen as of recent is this sort of, recording 2-Rock sounds and then playing them back digitally through a Kemper. I mean, gosh, I can't imagine that's that much fun, but it sure is convenient, right? I know Eli's got a Kemper, and sometimes he goes into the studio and he sets his Kemper down because it's a lot easier sometimes to plug into a Kemper or to just plug straight in and use something, digitally than it is to set up your whole rig when you're just playing, a 10-minute solo or, a 10-minute song or whatever, a 2-minute solo on a song, and you're just in and out of a studio. But I think there's no question that, and most players I think would agree with me, that when you have that 100-watter on stage with you behind you, or even just in your bedroom playing that 35-watter, there's nothing that compares to that sound, that analog sound. Now, to answer your question sort of broader, is there a slow death of this industry? Let's say guitars and let's include amplifiers in that. One of the things that article was mentioning was that there's so many builders now, And if you look at that, I think that's a good thing and maybe a bad thing. It's maybe confusing the consumer. Or what do I get? I don't know. There's so many different choices. Well, I'll just get a Fender because I know it's good. Or is it a good thing because there are those options and you can find something that is your sound or your look or your whatever the case may be. I think, the industry, I've been listening to this for a while, at least in the last several years, that, the amp industry is down. Sales are down in just amps alone. I haven't looked much at guitars because it's just not in that world. But, I think it boils down to, again, even if there's these smaller brands, I think it boils down to the personal service and the customer service and what you're giving the consumer. And in that respect, I think we've done really well, and we'll continue to do well. We're not trying to build ourselves up to be a $10 million Fender, Gibson, or whatever the case may be. We're just trying to build the best amplifiers we can, and that's it. And if the industry's crumbling around us, hopefully we don't see that. And let's hope there's not. One of the things that I do believe is that rising tides lifts all ships. So the more people that are playing guitar, the more people that are playing amplifiers, the more people that are getting interested in music, the more our industry will survive. So the more we can support, music programs in schools and the arts, I think is crucial to just as a society where we go with music. The more music, the better. Keep creating, keep playing, and hopefully we'll see the industry survive.
One of the other questions, I think the final question about amps, and is that we're going to have some people listening, and they may be looking at this exploding market of boutique amps. There's Two Rock, of course, you guys, Milkman, there's Benton, there's Morgan, there's Jackson Ampworks. There's all of these different builders out there, and some people might be going, I really am passionate about that. I like the electronics. I love building things. If somebody listening is really, really passionate about amps and wants to get into this space, what's some steps they could take?
Yeah, I would say probably, the best thing to do is just to start building, start exploring, and start listening to different things, and try different things, expand your palette, hear what's out there, and then start developing your sound and what you really want to do. It has to be fun. If it's not fun, don't do it.
Absolutely. Let's jump into some rapid fire questions. These are questions I ask everyone that we interview. They're a little bit less about your industry and on the larger picture of things. What are some tips you would give to someone with a big idea or dream and they simply don't know where to start?
I think probably the first thing I would say is start talking to people. If they have an idea and they have a concept, are other people doing this concept? Is it something that's out there already? If it is, who's doing it? How are they doing it? Start exploring what else is going on out there and start developing your own idea. It's really important to research sort of industries in general and see what's happening before you jump into something.
What's one change in the world you'd like to see?
Man, considering the era of I'd say politics in general, and without getting political, man, I'd love to see more love in this world.
I think that's awesome. I'm going to change my next question. Usually I ask it very broadly, and I'll follow it up with the broader question. But what do you want the legacy of Two Rock to be? Where do you want to take Two Rock?
So I'm going to answer that by just saying, something that I said a little bit ago, and that's I just want Two Rock to be a company that builds the best guitar amplifiers we can possibly build, and I want to make sure that we're always having fun. If there's a point where we're not having fun and we're not building what we truly want to build, and we're being directed by the industry or by the market to build something that we don't really want to build, then it's not going to be fun anymore. No matter what, I want to be able to, at the end of the day, lock the doors and go home with a smile on my face. And if I'm not doing that, I don't want to be here. And so I'd say I'm going to do everything in my power, and I know Eli's on the same page, to make sure that continues no matter what.
I think that's really awesome. On the broader picture, what do you want your legacy to be, your personal legacy?
I haven't thought about that really, because I'm not really. I guess I don't really consider myself sometimes when I think about, in terms of Two Rock, the legacy of Two Rock, or even my own legacy. I guess to me, I just enjoy people. I really enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy the friendships that I've garnered over the years, and especially through this industry, and to be able to have that sort of live on in through this, let's say through my career and through Two Rock, I think would be something that would be pretty cool. Somebody to look back and go, hey, I remember that Matt guy. He totally took care of me when I had this one issue, or when I had this this need, and he was able to solve my problem, or fix whatever it was, or get me into something, whatever it was. I think that probably would be something that would put a smile on my face.
That's awesome. Who or what inspires you?
There's so many inspirations, especially when we talk about the music industry. I mean, I listen to tons and tons and tons of music, and I'm around so many influential people, from artists, musicians, you name it. I would say probably, if I was to take one person that was an influence in my life, and I'll probably actually expand that to two, would probably be my grandfather and my father, and probably my mother too, and just my family in general, from my parents to my grandfather, how they they were strong people, and really taught me a lot about love and about taking care of people, and I would say that's where a lot of my inspiration comes from.
That's super cool. What are you reading or watching, and I'll throw this in, or listening to?
Okay. There's a new band out of Florida that I really dig. They're called the Electric Kiff. Some of the members, one of the bass player from the Kiff plays with Matt Schofield. Phenomenal band. That's in my CD player right now. Rodrigo just gave me the new CD. What am I watching? I've been watching Trailer Park Boys.
Okay.
As of recently, been binge watching Trailer Park Boys, and nothing currently on the reading tip. Although there's been a book by Simon Sinek, Start with Why, that's been sitting on my bookshelf for a while, and I get maybe a chapter every couple of months.
That's awesome. Before we ask the final question and wrap up the interview today, you guys are creating awesome stuff. And I think every guitar player should check out what Two Rock's doing. How can they connect with you?
You can always find us on the website at two-rock.com, two-rock.com, and the contact form on there goes right to me. The phone number's on there also. You can pick up the phone and call, although that's always a little bit harder just because, we triage. So as calls come in, we go down the list. So if you're at the end of the queue, it could take me a minute to get back to you. It's just the two of us, so between me and Eli. So sometimes it takes a minute. Although we do the best we can, especially in an emergency situation. Email is always best. You can always email me personally at mac@two-rock.com, or Eli at two-rock.com. Those are emails always the best way. And we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can.
That's awesome. What's one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
For me, and I mentioned this earlier, I've always wanted to work in the recording industry. I mean, how I got back into the music industry is I wanted to be a recording engineer. That's what I wanted to do. But everybody, it's right when the DigiKey 001, LE001 came out, everybody could have a home studio, and sort of the larger studios were not really a place to go find a job. And I couldn't support myself as an intern, unpaid for 3 years, getting coffee for the band and cleaning up after them. So, nor could I keep up financially with the changes in technology that were advancing so fast then. But I'd say one day I would really love to own a studio and to work again in the recording industry and production. I've spent a lot of time in the electronic music scene and love that music, from ambient stuff to to different synthesized music. I just have always been a big fan, and so I'd say getting a studio going at some point in the recording and working in the recording industry again, actually getting to engineer some stuff again would be something that would be a huge deal for me.
Well, Mac, like I said at the beginning, not only am I a massive fan, I just love what 2Rock stands for. Love what you guys are building. Thanks for taking time out and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate having me on, and keep in touch.
Once again, I want to thank my guest, Mac Skinner, the co-owner of 2Rock Amps. Such a cool guy. A lot of fun talking to him about what they're doing and what they're creating. On Thursday's episode, we have Alessandra Perez Rubio and Luisa Rector. They are the co-founders of Matiza, New York. They are creating amazing fashion for women. People like Chrissy Teigen, Ashley Graham, Kate Walsh, America Ferrera, Molly Sims, so many other people are wearing their incredible clothing. They also have a great social mission behind what they're doing. This is going to be a fun interview. You're not going to want to miss it this Thursday. jumbleThink is here to help you with your big idea and dream. All you have to do is drop me an email, mike@jumblethinc.com, and I read every email. I want to hear your struggles. I want to hear your successes. I want to hear the questions that you have that you may want help getting answered. Drop me a note. I'd love to hear what's going on and walk with you on your journey to create your big idea and dream. I want to thank you for listening to the jumbleThink podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. For me, it's been a ton of fun. Now get out there and make one step towards your big idea and dream and creating the world you want to live.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.